Good, how are you?
Come on down. We're gonna lift this up, put them in here, wrap this around your neck. You're like, oh, that's a very small camera.
Yeah, works out good though.
All right.
Oh yeah, there is pretty good right there. Alright folks, first of all, yeah, I forgot to say, happy St. Patrick's Day. Everybody, lots of people wearing green for I'm not Irish, but I'll say it. Happy St. Patrick's Day right there. Now, a few stations before we head in, about trains that is. First of all, when this train is moving, please keep your feet running forward real well, just like you're doing fine right now. Also, common sense, keep your arms, hands, legs, and knees in for safety. This is a big one. If anything falls off you, like your hard hat, your wallet, your wedding ring, whatever, do not try to reach over and pick it up. It's way too dangerous. That's why Stephanie's right behind us. Whatever you drop, she'll bring back to the next stop. And on the last tour, I brought 2 hard hats back to people. For some reason, it's mysteriously fly off. I don't know why. Now, last but not least, if everybody would, let's check out that front motor on the hood. Just see a brass belt there. Anytime throughout the tour, before I move the train, I'll always ring that bell. When you ladies and gentlemen hear that, get yourself squared away and know the train's about to move. Is everybody ready? That was pretty poor St. Patrick's Day, folks. Is everybody ready? Okay, did everybody enjoy the tour?
Yeah! I know, that was something else. No, seriously, folks, just about a half mile in and out here today. Quick history on Bisbee mining, folks, while we all let our eyes adjust. They first started mining copper in this town way back in 1877. But the actual tunnel, tunnel that we in the train are sitting in right now was not driven or built back in this mountain until the year 1915. Why so late? Because after about 30 years plus mining, all the copper ore bodies that are above us near the surface had been mined out many, many years before. And what they needed was a haulage tunnel to get the men way back in this mountain where the copper was still out to go to work back there. What I mean by haulage tunnel is, folks, when you look around, please, you can look around all you want to, but you're not going to find any copper, silver, or gold in here. I hate to see people looking around, oh, where's the mineralization? Haulage tunnel, folks. But before we get you out there, we'll definitely check our mineralization in no mined out area, I promise you that. Actually, the gray rock around us is calcium carbonate, plain old-fashioned limestone. It's called the host rock, H-O-S-T rock. What that means is, the limestone itself does not carry any values in ore, but the ore was injected into this rock many millions of years ago. There. And as far as safety goes, folks, in this mine tour, of course, we inspect it daily before we bring anybody in here. I was one of the guys that did it today, so I know we're good. And also, you are safe for sitting on this antique train in this mountain than you were in your automobile driving down the Bisbee, Arizona freeway. And that is absolutely no joke. Any people here from Tucson, Arizona?
Yeah.
Then you know what I mean. You really need from Tucson. You know that one coming down Campbell, that on-ramp on Keno right there, the I-10?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about right now. Okay, folks, we've been here a few minutes. Is everybody feeling good? Or does anybody need to get back to where the Arizona sun shines? I can hear a pin drop in the background, folks. I guess we're doing okay. Real good. We'll continue on. Now, next time I stop the train, if you would please stay on. We have one more small access door to pass you before we get down to our first stop. So for the next couple of minutes, Enjoy training right underground. Thank you. You're welcome. Looks like Captain Kirk's phaser right there.
Yep.
Cool, actually, man. Something comes up for you. That's my little sentence. Oh, you too. Thank you. That's my little sentence. 4-leaf clover.
Use your legs
Good.
to lead the way and watch your steps. There you go, bud. Watch your steps.
How did everybody enjoy the train ride down here? Yeah, I often tell my tours that we get people from on the tours pretty frequently that have been here 10, 20, 30 years ago. They don't remember anything about Bisbee or the tour or anything else, but everybody remembers that train ride. That's the star of our show right there. That's we're a very unique train. We're lucky to have it. Those little cars that we're riding on are called man cars. They were built in the 1920s. And that front motor I was pulling you in with is about mid-1940s. The back one's in 1926. That's my baby right there. And we have a hard time maintaining them and keeping them up, but we sure do. And some of you guys and gals can imagine, we have a lot of parts we have to send out and have machined and then bring back, especially those wheels right there. And those wheels are very costly, I guarantee it. Folks are now 1,500 feet back in this mountain with about 800 feet of limestone above our heads. I didn't lie to you out there behind that counter. We didn't drop down as we came in. But as we and the train came in, the mountain simply went up above us. That's why we're so deep right here. And this is one of many major mines that operated on and off in Bisbee for roughly a century of mining. This is the oldest one and the only one we give tours in. This mine was active from about 1877, 78 to the mid-1920s before they shut it down. But there's a lot more to it than just this tour. We're on the third level of this mine. This mine was engineered out with 7 levels in it. Each level is 100 feet apart. So above us, we have 4 more tunnels, very similar to this one, also 2 more down below. There's a lot of sub-levels in mining in between those major levels. So this is going to sound kind of weird, but when you think of this mountain, I know it's my partner Stephanie moving the train. She could have been a little quieter than that, but she's still kind of new right there. When you think of this mountain, think of a block of Swiss cheese mine from the inside out. And that's really more what it is right there. But definitely where we're standing at when this was active, when the men were working in this northern mountain, was about 1911 and 1915. At this point, all the copper ore was being mined up above. But to get that copper ore to the outside world, they would have to drop it down here to do that. And what did that for them is right behind me, folks. Check this out. And this is the real deal, yeah. You got 4 wooden chutes going back in this mountain. They go back in there about 12 feet on an incline. 12 feet back there. Picture this tunnel twice as bigger than it is, going straight up vertically, connecting some of those levels and sub-levels up above. Back in that day, they're hiring 18, 19-year-old men up there to push these full ore cars around by hand on this rail. Easy task like that. Bring those cars to the top of the chute, dump the ore, and fill up this one big transfer chute with copper ore. Down here, just the opposite. Those young men are pushing around empty cars. They would spot or stand those empty cars underneath these chutes. Once they did, that man's going to pick up a piece of pipe, about 6 foot long. Pipe is hollow. Put that hollow pipe over these round handles like that. Use that for leverage and pull down. That will push these doors up. Put about 2,000 pounds or 1 ton of copper ore in each car. Shut these chutes back off. Then here again, physically push these cars out to daylight. I'm asking for volunteers among you, ladies and gentlemen. Equal opportunity employer. We say ladies nowadays, please. Yeah, no way am I going to do that. I don't blame you right there. Yeah. Yeah.
5 o'clock somewhere.
That's when Bisbee's mines were really small, folks. They could get away with that, but they're getting bigger and bigger all the time. So the next step of oil transportation, instead of a man pushing, was an animal pulling. Here in Bisbee, they trained a mule on the surface to pull 4 of these one-ton cars. Once that mule was trained, it was brought down underground and spent the next 4 or 5 years working down here without ever seeing the sunshine again. Now, before this lady picks up her cell phone and calls Pete on this is a happy story. I would be telling you that. Bisbee, we're proud to say, took very good care of their mules down here. Each mule had its own individual stable, the best feed and water money could buy, and also a full-time veterinarian on the payroll with these animals needed they got. And most importantly, they did not let them die or go blind down here. After 4 or 5 years, they rotate those mules back up to the surface. Once on the surface, rehabilitate them to the sunlight and simply give them away to townspeople, farmers, ranchers, whoever needed a mule. Yeah, once a mule put in its time down here, it never came back. It got to enjoy its 401k on the surface after this. But there's a real cool story about that rehabilitation, ladies and gentlemen. This is 1911, 1915. So the lighting down here was a candle in a man's hand, or the carbide lamp. You've seen them on TV, the reflectors, the oxygen acetylene things coming out there. But what I'm telling you all is, those mules were actually working in dimmer light than what this tour is standing in. After 4 or 5 years, just picture the day they took them up. When it just blinded them when they hit the surface. So what they would do, they'd immediately take these mules and herd them into a big old huge wooden barn. Once inside that barn, they shut all the doors and windows, making it dark like the mine was. Now they had food, water, ventilation, food to proof them guarded out, stuff like that. And each and every day after those animals are in there, those windows and doors, just gradually, a little more, slowly each day, slowly letting sunlight in until they were good to go life on the surface. But we're here in Bisbee, we're actually proud to tell that story because for that time period out in the American West, most mines unfortunately did not treat their animals very good at all. But that's a documented fact here in Bisbee. Folks, let me step on, we'll walk in, down in front, we'll walk down to our next stop. Thank you for the really good question.
Okay, folks, this is a pretty interesting spot to me, and hopefully it is to you. That's why I want to give everybody what they can see in here. Mining is an earth-moving business. You know, for mankind to get down to earth in the first place, to get the metals out that we use every day in our lives, they have to use a lot of high explosives and, you know, fracture and move a lot of rock. In this limestone rock on my left-hand side, those miners have about 21 holes drilled 7 foot deep. They've got their drills and equipment out now at a safe distance. They're getting ready to do what's called load the face. And load the face means put the powder or explosives in this hole. But we have to take a time out right here because you cannot come underground and blow anything up. What would happen if those miners actually exploded or blew about, you know, several hundred ton of limestone out of here? If you need a hand, look right above your head, ladies and gentlemen. They take a real good chance of wiping out the timber forest. What might happen if they did that? Well, then there's a mountain down like on top, exactly right. So we have to implode it instead of explode it. And it's really pretty simple and kind of cool how they did it. I'll walk you through it. Pretend those fuses aren't here right now. Out of all those holes drilled in that limestone face, look right in the middle where my hand is at. You see a group of 5 holes real close together. This is called a 5-hole burn pattern. And something as simple as this is what's going to bring several hundred ton of limestone in on itself instead of shooting it out and tearing everything up. This is how that works. The miner's going to walk up to the center hole, put maybe 5 or 6 sticks of dynamite there with a 12-foot fuse hanging out. Here's the key. You got 4 holes real close right around them, going back 7 foot also, with nothing in them. They're left empty on purpose. This is what makes this whole thing work. All the rest of these dynamite holes around that, again, 5 or 6 sticks of dynamite, all with 12-foot fuses. Okay, they've got that done. Now he steps back up to the center hole again, takes that 12-foot fuse before it does anything else. He's going to cut 18, 19 inches off that. What did he just do? He made this fuse in the middle shorter than any other fuse up there. When lit, the detonation will start right there. Now he picks up his timing device. This never ceases to amaze me. Their timing device in Bisbee, Arizona, all the way from 1877 to 1975, was something as simple as a wooden board with a notch cut in it. Why do they use it that long? Because it works really well, folks. Why is that there? They'll take that shortest fuse, put it in that notch, and slide all the way to the bottom and leave a ½ inch sticking out about like that. Now the way he trims, you get a little bit more of that in there. This one wants to pop out on me right here. Now the way he trims the rest of these fuses is
It's gonna be like a spiral pattern, getting bigger and bigger out around the middle. We'll start right here in the right. He takes his next 12-foot fuse, slides it down in there, and cuts it off just a half-inch longer than the one below. Spiral pattern, next 12-foot fuse. In fact, any fuse he puts on this board from now on, ladies and gentlemen, will always be a half-inch longer than the one below. Why? He wants that shortest fuse at the bottom and the longest fuse at the top right there. Now, we're on a time tour, so I'm not going to put all these fuses in this board. We'll be getting about noon time, so just pretend. Remember, shortest at the bottom, the longest at the top right there. The light fuse, he's going to pick up what looks like a 4th of July sparkler. The correct name was hot wire igniter, but the slang name was spitter, bore, and spitter. That was slang for the shooting or the spitting of the sparks at the end of the fuse. His spitter burns 1,200 degrees, folks, pretty intense heat. He'll light this with a match, or strike it like one. Always, he lights the shortest fuse at the bottom, then each longer fuse after that. He gets all his fuses lit. He simply breaks the thin board, lets those fuses hang, throws the spitter down, and what does human nature tell us all to do? Run. Wasn't that crazy? We all watch too much TV and movies, including myself, folks. After he lit that last fuse, he's got about 6 minutes to walk out here. We're trying to kill your own workforce. I want to keep you guys healthy right here. Now, he's going to walk down about where the train is at. When he's down there, here's what's going to happen up here. Remember that shortest fuse in the middle? Brings in your center hole. You got 5 sticks of TNT with 4 empty holes right around it. There's just a thin piece of limestone between those holes in that dynamite. This is called the path of least resistance right there. When that detonates, boom, blows right out those 4 inches all the way back in there. First half second, what has he got? About 11-inch diameter hole, 7.5 foot deep, with crushed and polarized rock in there. But he has something else back in there too. He's counting on this to make this whole thing work. He just detonated 5 sticks of dynamite. You can imagine the energy he has. The energy wants to move somewhere, only for one place it can, right out here. It'll actually take that crushed core and just shoot, shotgun and put it in that room right there. So what does he have now? Right in the middle of all the detonation, red rock around it, an empty hole called a cut-hole reliever cavity going back 7.5 foot. I call it a weak spot right in the middle of this rock, and that's exactly what it is. If you remember that wooden board, not even a split second later, the next longest fuse detonates those 5 sticks of TNT in there. But instead of breaking out to a 1.5 foot cup of good solid limestone, got a nice empty hole, 1.5 inches of limestone. Again, that path of least resistance. So when this detonates, it implodes into that hole. Now we're bringing this rock in the middle. This one's shot next. It'll break down to your weak point. It'll break across it, and now it'll break up into it. Next 2 or 3 seconds, you have the 24-inch diameter hole, about 7.5 foot deep. The difference is now the rock has somewhere to go. Instead of shooting out, all that rock crams into that cut hole. And when it does that, it's going to create another fractured, empty, weak spot, gap right around it for your next detonation to implode down to that, which causes another void to flow down to that. Always bringing that rock up in the center, folks, instead of shooting out and taking the timber down. The implosion wasn't that tough after all. The young man's got it down pat. He's studying physics at ASU right now, so not really young. Folks, if you would step in the back room, you got stuff to talk about back in here, but right here showing up here. Look, my favorite topic about this topic is right above our head. How, supporting the ground from caving in the first place and protect the men working down in here. This is called a segment set. It's made to take the weight from directly up above and transport it to the 2 rock walls on each side of us right here. And again, between the top of that and the top of the cement, you about 800 feet of limestone. And all this wood, old and new, is all Douglas fir and pine they use for support. And the odd part about that is, Douglas fir and pine is a kind of a soft, weak wood. So why in the heck would they use that? There's a real good reason. They found out through the history of mining, folks, that the good oak, cedar, mahogany would definitely support more weight, that good tough wood. But it's actually too strong. What I mean by that is, your good tough wood will take your weight and take your weight and keep on taking it until it absolutely can't take it anymore. Without any warning, snap and cave in. What that means is the men working down below, when they were soft coming in when it was hit them. Unfortunately, it was all bad news. That's why your softer wood is a paddle tail or an early warning system. Let's say we all worked in here yesterday morning, everything was fine, We come back in this morning, this whole wooden structure is tilted about 3 inches to the south. What happened last night when we were gone, folks, you can stand right over here, sir, if you want to. I take that light out of your eye. What happened last night when we were gone, ladies and gentlemen, something shifted between here and the top of the mountain. Maybe an old mining area collapsed up there, or rock-filled landslide. our heavy rain, water weighs a lot, folks, and it was 8 pounds per gallon, something like that. We bring in the engineers that see, yeah, we got some shifting here, but it's still pretty strong, so we can continue working, and we do. Then about 2 weeks later, one of us notices little horizontal cracks are starting to appear in those 10 by 10s everywhere. And every day, they're growing about a ½ inch longer. About a week after that, yeah, now we know it's taking some weight, real weight. About a week after that, the timber starts talking to us. What that means is, we start getting pops and creaks and cracks. Then we know it's time to get out and get to safety. So the old saying in mining was, when the timber starts talking, we start walking in the opposite direction right there. But that's why the softer wood instead of the harder wood. Now, I'm going to step over here. If you folks, you can kind of sit on where I was. Now, this is for some strange reason the most photographed thing on the mining tour. Does anybody know what this type of mining car was used for?
Yes,
I bet you do. Yeah. This is, has a lot of colorful nicknames. I call it the poop wagon. It has a lot of colorful nicknames. The correct one is sanitation. Yeah. We came in today on the Copper Queen mine tour. Nice little flat train ride. That was the only major mine in Bisbee that had a horizontal entrance. The rest of them were like you do see on TV, with a big old gallows over head frames up above. The guys get in the cage or elevator and drop them down to the center of the earth, it seems like. This is a real, it's not in use anymore, but this is a real old underground elevator shaft right here. Now, we do have this thing filled in for safety. Nobody's going to fall into it. The old elevator right there, cage, called a cage in mining. But look at the top. You see a bonnet on top made out of tin right there. That was to keep the rocks, any loose rock from falling down that shaft when the men are going hitting them. So our ride just showed up. They're all wearing blue hats, so I would like you to walk back to the train. If they're standing your way, just mostly you say right, mostly your way right there, right there. So when the was and has been mined out. Now, most of these areas after mining, you get more, I feel, it's backfilled with waste rock from within the mine itself. That way they keep the mountain stable to continue mining right there. That way, if you ever see an underground mine, the gallows or head frames, you never see a big waste dump. Because most of that was utilized and never left the mine with stuff. There wasn't any good right there. Now, our promise to show everybody some copper ore, so if you would, everybody take your lights. Point them right down at your feet. Now, there's absolutely no copper ore down there, ladies. But there's a real reason why I'm doing this. Because they're actually put their light on this all at once, it's hard to see. So please, with your lights down, look where I'm circling, pointing, and you see a flash of 3D rock right up in there. Yeah, that is a big fact. You're going out. That's one color of copper ore called malachite, and that's what was built in cavity at one time. Up to about 1900, when they smelted that rock down in a small copper smelter system, used to with true buildings now, they would yield or get about 25% copper out of rock. That is super high grade gold. When the miner got down here, one of the first tools they picked up was drill a hole. The last one was called a starter steel or a full steel. It's nothing more than about a 16-inch chisel with a little flatter tip on it right there. So drive that back in there. He's going to pick up anywhere from a 2 to 4 pound hammer. He would call us, that means start that hole on this gray line, on this gray limestone or that pretty green malachite, whatever's getting ready to blast. He would strike that steel, turn it, strike it, turn it, strike it, and turn it. You turn that between the strike strokes to make it a good round hole, and you keep that steel from getting stuck on them back in that hole. So 2 men working 10-hour shifts, they're probably trading off every hour. They go hammer and chisel. Might get a couple holes, about 2.5 foot deep. They load the dynamite in there to break that rock out. And if it was that pretty green malachite, they would then put it in baskets and buckets and sacks and carry it back up to the surface.